Welcome back, my friends, to the Derate the Hate podcast. I'm your host, Wilk of wilksworld.com, and in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about being wrong, how you can be sincere, but be sincerely wrong, and then also talk about lying a little bit, and how being wrong and lying are not necessarily the same thing. You know, here at the Derate the Hate podcast, we're all about bettering the world, one attitude at a time. And the way we do that is as individuals. How we live our lives as individuals makes all the difference. You know, we did not create the hate, but with your help, we can derate the hate. So what have you done today to make your life a better life? What have you done today to make the world a better place? As an individual, it's up to you to make the choices that are going to make or break your life. And by making or breaking your life, you play a big part in how the world around us is better or worse. I think we all know that there's an awful toxic discourse amongst people of differing opinions these days. Probably as toxic as anything we've ever seen. I mean, it's certainly far more toxic than I would say most people living today have seen in their lifetimes. And I think it's very important that each of us take a moral inventory of how we play a part in that discourse. So the first question that I have actually comes out of part of a sermon that I heard in church in recent weeks, where the pastor said, you can be sincere and be sincerely wrong. Now, I'm not here to dive into that sermon or talk about that, but my question is this. Is it possible, do you think, in this day and age, in the toxicity that we see online and the way that people treat each other that they disagree with, is it possible for you, and this is something that you have to ask yourself, but is it possible to look at somebody, see the humanity in that person and say, they're wrong, they're sincere, but they're sincerely wrong? I think that's a question we all need to ask. And then when we're asking that question, we also have to ask, are they just sincerely wrong or are they lying? Now, that part of the equation is so important, I think, and I think it's one that is often overlooked in much of what we see today in the discourse between people of differing opinions. I think they completely bypass the idea of saying, is that person wrong? And they go right to that person is lying. Now, trust me when I tell you, this is also something that's very, very difficult for me, because I look at a lot of what I see in the politics of today, and especially with things going on with the pandemic and everything else, and when I see the things that have been done, and I think nearly every step of the way, the government has been wildly wrong in what they've done to the American people with this pandemic. But I often have to ask myself, are they just wrong or are they lying? Or is it a combination of the two? So it got me to thinking, you know, they're obviously sincere, but are they sincerely wrong or are they lying? So then I just did a little bit of research, and obviously, okay, so when we talk about a lie, obviously a lie is a predetermined course of action that somebody takes that involves an intention to deceive. So when it comes to lying, obviously we have an integrity issue. We have a problem with somebody and their character if they can easily lie to you or lie to whoever, then there is a problem with that person's character. And, well, at that point you really have to decide, okay, what are these lies about? Is it a little white lie here and there? Is it something of great consequence to other people? Meaning, is the lie done with the intention of benefiting the liar and destroying those on the other side of the lie? I mean, because I think, and I know some people will say, well, a lie is a lie, and no matter what the lie is, every lie is just as bad as the other. I am probably not in that camp. I am probably more in the there is a scale of lies, and this got me to thinking about something else. So I looked it up, and there are any number of websites that will talk about different degrees of lies or different scales of lies, and I'll actually put some links in the show notes to a couple websites that I found. One is, I think it's changingminds.org. Had a good matrix, a little 4-box quadrant kind of scale, talking about white lies, gray lies, black lies, and red lies. And I thought that was quite interesting, the way that they lay it out, and how the different dimensions of a lie, and how that lie would affect me and how it would affect the other person, and the different degrees, the 4 types of lies that they talk about. There's another site that I was looking at, talks about 3 different kinds of lies, or types of lies, being lies of commission, lies of omission, or character lies, or lies of influence. So, there is a scale, in my opinion. Like I said, there is a scale of lies, and there's going to be times when lies make sense. I mean, for instance, if I was put in a position where I had to tell a lie to save the life of a loved one, or you think about the stories back in the Holocaust, when families were hiding Jews in their basements and their attics and stuff like that, and the Nazis would come and question those people, and they had to lie. For all intents and purposes, they had to lie about hiding the Jews, but they did it to save people's lives. So in those instances, lies make sense, right? And I think everybody would agree with that, or all reasonable people would agree with that. So not all lies are created equal. So when does it actually come down to being wrong, being sincerely wrong, but being wrong, and then lying? Again, it comes down to that intention to deceive. And I think a lot of times what we see nowadays is people jumping to conclusions about people's intentions. What intentions do they have in their heart? It's so hard to say. When I look at much of what I see coming from the mainstream media and those in politics, whether it be local or national, and I look at the results of their actions and what it is that they're trying to do, and maybe the past history of what they've done. And when I see a politician that is constantly trying to increase the size and scope of the government and decrease the size and scope of the individual, I am automatically skeptical of their intentions. And my little radar sensors that talk about people's intentions to deceive, they start popping up. I can't see it any other way. So I may be wrong, but I oftentimes look at that and see their actions as actions with an intention to deceive, rather than somebody that's being wrong, because the history of what they've said and done is clearly something that they've done with the intention to deceive people in some way or another. And then the other part of this is generally those with facts on their side and those that are telling the truth are not afraid of an opposing argument, because they know that they have the facts on their side. But those that don't have the facts on their side, maybe they're just working off pure emotion, or, like I said, sincerity. They're sincere, but they're sincerely wrong. They don't want that opposition. They don't want an opposing argument because they are doubtful of their position, or they know they're lying. So with that said, it's something to think about. Why are we seeing so much opposition? Why are we seeing so many instances where so-called fact checkers in social media are shutting down dissent, shutting down opposing opinions, shutting down doctors that don't agree with the standard that is set forth by our government. It's something to think about. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not saying that they're lying. I just think it's awfully peculiar that they have spent so much time, those in the media, those in academia, those in politics, especially one side of politics, have spent so much time over the past 2 years berating, degrading, and censoring those of any kind of dissenting opinion. And it continues to get worse. I've talked about cancel culture a number of times on this podcast, and that in itself is bad enough. Cancel culture has destroyed the lives and livelihoods of untold numbers of people because they have thoughts or opinions or have spoken out against whatever. They spoke out against something that somebody with some amount of influence, some amount of power did not like, so their life was destroyed. Their career was cut short. Their livelihood was taken away from them in one way or another because of the cancel culture. And over the past couple of years, since the onset of this pandemic, this illness that has been wreaking havoc on our globe, there's been several people that have tried to speak out in different ways that, frankly, have had their lives destroyed because they did not agree with those that had the power, those that may or may not have been using this illness to gain more power or to change the world. Are they wrong? Who's wrong? Which side is wrong? One side is wrong, one side is lying. There's a bunch of people right in the middle who probably just don't know. But to censor those of differing opinions, whether they be on one side or the other, is not the right answer. Because we're all human beings. We're all human beings that need to figure things out for ourselves. And that's what free people do. So we, as free human beings, should have the right to hear all opinions, all information, and make decisions for ourselves. Because it's like a friend of mine often says, there's generally two sides to every story, and the truth is found somewhere in the middle. And I agree with that to a large extent. But the big thing is being wrong and lying are always going to be two different things. Being sincere doesn't mean you're right. Being wrong does not mean you're lying. Again, lying has to do with an intention to deceive. And I have no doubt that there's plenty of people on both sides of this pandemic issue and both sides of most controversial issues that do things with the intention to deceive. But we have to be free to make those decisions on our own as to whether that person is truly trying to deceive us, if they are just purely wrong, or does what they're saying fall somewhere in the middle? As free-minded and free people, we have to be able to choose for ourselves based on all the information that's put in front of us. So when it comes to this illness, we should again be able to freely speak with our doctors about what we want and what they suggest that we do. We should not be beholden to unelected bureaucrats or even elected people who think they have the power to mandate and dictate to us how to live our lives. And that doesn't just go for the situation that we're dealing with this illness. It goes for all things. Free people should be presented with all information. And we should be allowed to think through that information, look at all the information that we have to us, all of it, not censored by some faraway fact checker that may or may not have a hidden agenda. But we should be able to look at all information and make decisions for ourselves and live our lives as we see fit. So if you happen to be one of those that agrees with the inhibition of free speech and the censorship that's going on in big tech and the mandates that we live our lives in a certain way to appease those that believe they have a moral superiority over other people, I would just ask that you take a deep dive and a deep look into your own moral compass. Is it right to mandate and dictate how others live their lives based on what you believe to be true because somebody else told you it was true? Are they right? Are they wrong? Maybe they're sincerely wrong. Maybe they're lying. Is it right to govern the lives of those that you disagree with when those that gave you your opinion may have been lying? I don't know. That's something you have to figure out for yourself. What is an absolute and undisputable fact is over the past 2 years, the lives of billions of people have been changed based on mandates and dictates of just a relatively small number of people. Are those people right? Are they wrong? Maybe they're sincere, but they're sincerely wrong. And maybe they're lying. Again, something you'll have to figure out on your own. Something you'll have to decide for yourself. And hopefully, you're one of those that are on the right side of history. With that, I'll just say get out there. You as an individual, get out there. Be kind to one another. Be grateful for everything that you've got. And remember, it's up to you to make each and every day the day that you want it to be. Friends, I am Wilk from wilksworld.com. I am here every week doing what I can to better the world one attitude at a time. I sincerely hope that the content that I'm putting out there has been of some benefit to you, and I hope that you will help me by sharing these episodes with your friends and your network. With that, I am going to back on out of here, and we will catch you next time.